Hello viewers, welcome to our continuing series of lesson transmission. My name is Peter Kibuchi, a teacher of English in Boqol Academy. In our lesson today, we are going to look at a very interesting area that you may have ignored in this book. Let us bear in mind that KCSE sample questions are normally derived from such areas that we may ignore. That is why I want, for the next 40 minutes, I want us to look at the effects of racism as shown to us in this book, the Pearl. You must agree that the idea of racism has been well discussed in this book. So you must first of all understand the idea of racism and where it is depicted in this book. So my assumption is that after reading this book, you have understood that there is racism. And that is why I want to go a step further, and then we look at the effects of those racist connotations that have been displayed in this book. And we have formulated a sample question to guide us in that discussion. And the sample question is, in cross-reference to John Steinbeck, the Pearl, write an essay entitled The Effects of Racism. And as earlier discussed, and as you've been introduced by your teacher, we must always start with the introduction. My sample introduction will be, racial discrimination in any society is harmful. The essay below illustrates this truth as depicted in the Pearl. Having had our introduction, then we can divide our body into our 4 paragraphs. In our paragraph number 1, we are going to look at effect number 1. And effect number 1, racism can cause hatred, it can cause fear, it can cause anger. In one word, racism is associated with negative emotions. So our E1 will be negative emotions. Hatred, fear, and anger. In our E2, or paragraph number 2, E is depicting effect. We are going to look at suspicion. Racism can bring suspicion. It can also cause curiosity. Paragraph number 3, we are going to look at ignorance. Racism can cause or bring about ignorance. And the last, but not the least, racism can be associated with economic deprivation. And to guide you further, in every paragraph, I have indicated the pages that you need to refer to when you are discussing that. For example, hatred, fear, and anger can be found on page 26, page 29, page 50, and page 51. Suspicion and curiosity, page 23. Ignorance, page 46, page 47, page 48, page 50. Economic deprivation, page 8, page 26, pages 67 to 68. When you have that guideline, it is very easy for you to write your essay. Let us look at paragraph number 1. E1. Negative emotions. What are some of the basic things that we look at in this particular paragraph? That one is well illustrated on page 26 of this book. And this is what we are told. When Kino were moving to the doctor's place, paragraph 2, Kino hesitated a moment. The doctor was not of his people. This doctor was of a race which for nearly 400 years had beaten, they had starved, they had robbed, and they had despised Kino's race. And they had also frightened it. You can see that aspect of racism being captured there. So when Kino is moving and walking to go and face the doctor, this is what is running in his mind. That kind of racial divide that existed before then. And what are we told there? What is happening in Kino's mind? This guy could kill the doctor more easily than he could talk to him. For all of the doctor's race spoke of Kino's race as though they were simple animals. That one is very clear, that when Kino and the rest of the people are in a procession heading to the doctor's place, some negative emotions are running through Kino's minds. He felt that he could easily kill the doctor than he could talk to him. A person who could easily kill than talk is a person who is temperamental, a person whose anger overflows, a person whose anger is mercurial, rises very fast, like mercury. We are told every time Kino came to this race, he felt weak and afraid and angry. Every time Kino encountered this guy always felt weak and angry. He felt weak and angry. Weakness here is fear, and anger is as a result of that deep hatred that he had towards the people of the plaster houses. These guys, instance number 1 is the gate incident. When they go to the doctor, they have presented their case through the servant. The doctor has demanded for money. Kino removes some misshapen, dirty, ulcerous pearls that were valueless. The doctor declines. And then he says, he is not a vet to treat insect bites. And he says, tell them that I went for a more serious case. Kino is very angry. And what does he do? Kino strikes the gate with his bare knuckles until blood flowed between his fingers. That is as a result of anger. Instance number 2. Later on, these guys go and settle. Coyotito becomes better by day. But once the news comes to the doctor that Kino has found the giant pearl, he schemes around so that he can go there. And when he goes to Kino's place, once again, the very sight of the doctor, Kino is boiling with anger. When the doctor goes there, and then Kino says that the baby is almost well. Then the doctor laughs. Scorpion bite has some curious effects. The child may later show some effects of withered leg, crumpled back. This child may get blind. And Kino buys that ignorance. He buys the doctor's argument. And when the doctor goes to where the child is, we are told Kino felt fear and anger melt down. Page 51. Sample that. On page 51, we are told, paragraph number 2, Kino felt the rage and hatred melting towards fear. What does that one tell us? He had this anger, but it is now melting towards fear. He did not know, and perhaps the doctor did, and he could not take the chance of putting his certain ignorance against this man's possible knowledge. He was trapped as his people were always trapped. That is incident number 2, where that is doctor's visit. The doctor's visit. Kino, fear melts down. Into anger. And then he feared what might happen to the child. And it is only after that, even when Joanna is clutching the child and does not want to let go, Kino looked at her, and it is only through that, after nodding, that Joanna gives out the child. So the fear is still manifest in Kino at that particular moment. Once again, in this E1, paragraph number 1, when the doctor is coming, Kino is standing at the doorway, and we are told that he felt hatred and rage framing at the back of his eyes, and fear too. Page 50. That one is important for us. Paragraph number 4. Kino stood in the door, fearing it, and hatred raged and flamed in the back of his eyes. Hatred raged and flamed in the back of his eyes, and fear too, for the 100 years of subjugation were cut deep in him. So the element of fear has been well described. Another incident is when the priest is visiting the brush houses. Look at the behavior of these people. They remove their scarves for fear of these priests, this man of God. And that one is an element of racism. Paragraph number 2 is what we have called suspicion. E2 suspicion. Or even curiosity. This one can be very well demonstrated by two group of characters here. It can be demonstrated by the neighbors. It can be demonstrated by the beggars. That suspicion, that curiosity can be well demonstrated there. Let us break it down. The child has been stung by a scorpion. Gianna has done her best by sucking out the poison, but the situation is deteriorating. The baby screams, inviting the neighbors. The neighbors are here now. And Gianna tells Kino, let us call the doctor. What is happening in the minds of the neighbors? The neighbors uses 3 very powerful adjectives. Page 23. Let us look at that. On page 23, paragraph number 3. The doctor, she said, go to get the doctor. The word was passed out among the neighbors, where they stood close packed in the little yard behind the brush fence, and they repeated among themselves, Joanna wants the doctor. A wonderful thing. Adjective number 1. Adjective number 2, a memorable thing. Adjective number 3, to get him would be a remarkable thing. And the neighbors now become curious. What will happen when Kino, Joanna, and the child eventually encounters the doctor? Memorable thing, remarkable thing. It would be. This is what the neighbors feel when Joanna eventually tells, if the doctor cannot come, then we can go to him. At this mind, the thought of the neighbors got into Kino, and Kino said he would not come. The people in the door said, and the thought got into Kino The doctor would not come. Kino said to Joanna, the doctor would not come. Kino said to Joanna. The neighbors are suspicious because they are aware of the deep racial divide that existed between the doctor and the people of the brush houses. They become suspicious. And in the procession, the neighbors who are always at the church compound, seated in their post, looked at those guys. And from the way they were dressed, they looked at Kino's blanket that had seen 1,000 washings. And they definitely knew that these were poverty people. Look at this interesting thing. They knew that these were poverty people. And they had known the doctor. Two very interesting things that they had known the doctor about. That the doctor was mean. He was only giving out dirty brown pennies in church as a donation. They also knew another thing, that the doctor was characterized with avarice, that is greed. They knew that. So when it came to them that these people are going to see the doctor, the beggars too decide, let us follow the procession. They wanted to see the encounter. In fact, the book says they wanted to see the drama that would unfold out of that. You can see this kind of curiosity that we are talking about on page 26. Our E3 ignorance. The racist in this book had deliberately made sure that these people wallow in ignorance. What is the evidence? Where do we get the evidence there? The evidence is there on page 26. And on page 26, this is what we are told. The doctor was of a race which for nearly 400 years had beaten. That is one. They had starved. I am interested with the word starved. To starve could be physical, could be mental. Starvation, starving them of knowledge. They had also robbed, that is economic deprivation. They had also despised the hatred that we are talking about, Kino's race. And this starvation is the one that I am capitalizing on, starvation. The racist had starved these people of knowledge, and they knew that they were ignorant. How is ignorance manifested in this book? A very interesting scenario here it is. When the doctor comes to visit Kino, he carries with him his medical bag. And in this bag, there were his medical paraphernalia. If it is in today's language, maybe in that bag there was a stethoscope. In that bag, there were some syringes. In that bag, there was some prescriptive medication. And then he was armed with a lamp. He knew that in the brush houses, these people live in darkness. And this guy comes with his own lamp. And it wants to have some effect. So when he comes, he makes sure that he displays his paraphernalia. And he knew one thing, that the people of the brush houses were always fascinated by this kind of paraphernalia. Look at that ignorance. They're always fascinated. And when they are fascinated, they believed that this man is a superior man. This man is going to make it happen. And he displayed that. And unfortunately, we are told, Kino, just like his people, they were always trapped. Now it's on page 51. They were always trapped. I want to capitalize on the word trapped. To be trapped is to be in that state of quagmire, that ignorance, to be enshrined, to be cocooned in that ignorance. And when that one was done, he knew the magic. Then he tells Kino about the three things that are likely to happen to the child, about the withered leg, about the crumpled back, and then about the blindness. And Kino obliges. He did not want to chance the knowledge that is associated with this man. Look at that ignorance. Incident number 2 is the priest. After learning Kino's lucky fight, the priest comes into the brush house. And remember, the priest always considered these people as children. It did not matter how old you were, but in his eyes, in his racist imaginations, you are always a child. And then when he comes here, he tells Kino that Kino is named after a great man of the church, a man that is associated with great things. And then he made it sound as a benediction. And then Kino, something interesting happens in his mind. When the priest tells these deliberate lies, it was aimed at making Kino soften. It was aimed at making Kino feel great. It was aimed at making Kino give out very easily. But in Kino's mind, he says, Koyotito, when he learns, we shall know what things are in the books and what things are not in the books. So this guy had known about their ignorance. And that is the ignorance that he wanted to exploit. After telling Kino all these wonderful things, blah, blah, about his name being in the books, then he tells Kino, thou shalt remember to give thanks to that who gave you the treasure. And we see this kind of thing working. Joanna tells the priest, Father, we shall be married in church because Kino has said it. Look at that aspect of ignorance. Number 3, ignorance of these people is found in Kino's ambition. One of the things that makes Kino so ambitious, and then he clings onto the pearl, he has the child in his mind. When Joanna tells Kino that this thing is going to destroy us, this thing is evil, let us throw it back into the sea. Kino tells Kino tells Joanna, Coyotito must have a chance. So Kino was dreaming about this child having great education. That is one of the things. It had obsessed him until one time he even had some nightmares. And in the nightmare, he saw Coyotito reading a big book. The book was as big as a building. Look at this. He's using local imagery. The only thing that he has seen big are the buildings, which I believe are the plaster houses, that he'll be able to read a book that is as big as a building, that he'll be able to read letters that will be galloping, and these letters will be as huge as dogs. Remember, one of the frequent visitors in the brush houses were the stray dogs and the stray pigs. So Kino had known so much about the dogs. That is why he says in this imagery that the child is going to read a book that will be as, with letters big and galloping as a dog. And he knew that through Kino's reading, then they are going to get enlightenment. That is the ignorance. Number 4, which is the last one, is economic deprivation. This one can lead to economic deprivation. Once again, we borrow from page 26, that for 400 years, the people had deprived them, they had stabbed them, they had robbed them. And a very good example to show this economic deprivation is Joanna Thomas' anecdote. Remember that anecdote when Kino is going to sell the pearl, and then Joanna Thomas is telling Kino, you must be very careful that they do not rob you. Page 67, page 68. And then we are told a story about how it happened a long time ago. The people of the brush houses, they had decided that they are going to get an agent to whom they'll give the pearls, and then these pearls will be sold at the capital where the prices were fair.